Hey, Safe Space, it's V. Terrell Hill. I hope you're well. Today, we're back with another episode on the abuse series. And today, we're going to be talking about breaking the generational cycle of abuse. It's not just about you, but it's about those that are coming behind you. It's about your children and your children's children and your children's children's children. So you don't want to go anywhere. As a matter of fact, before we even get started, make sure you like, share, subscribe, and comment. All right. Do me that favor, like, share, subscribe, and comment. I move forward and I bring my guest on, Shantae Charles, I want to reference episode 5 when we talked about going home. That is the way you break the generational cycle, this turmoil that has gone from generation to generation in your life. You go home. Watch this clip of episode 5 talking about going home, and we'll be right back. Some of you need to go home. And when I mean go home, I'm not just and for some of you it's literal. You were snatched away from your family. Why every time you get close to this certain group of people, you get further away from your family? It's time to go back to your roots. It's time to connect to your DNA. It's time to, for some of you, you might not ever go back to a church again. But your spirituality should not take the brunt of abuse for what that local church did. You know you loved to pray in spite of the abuse, but yet you don't pray anymore. It's time to go home. You used to be so happy and joyful and loving, but he broke your heart, stole your joy, and mistreated you. And now you're nasty and mean. It's time to go home. Used to be a giving, you would give anything to anybody, and you knew it was a special gift that's in your bloodline. You come from a family of givers, and now you're stingy and you don't want to give up nothing. It's time to go back home. Welcome back. I have a very special guest. This lady is a resource of resources. Her brain is sharp as a knife. I originally asked her to come on just because I enjoy her insight. But in the pre-interview, I realized she's more connected to this than what I thought. And so we rearranged the entire concept of the show and decided to just align it to her story in the beginning. And then in segment 2 and 3, we'll talk about the problem, how this persists, and then we'll discuss how to fix it in the solutions. All right. Without further ado, I want to welcome my guest and my friend, Miss Shantae Charles. How are you, Shantae?
I am good.
Good to hear that. Good to hear that. I have been looking forward to speaking with you, and I'm not going to take up too much time. But before you get into your story, take a moment, a quick moment, and introduce yourself, and just let us know who we're talking to.
Well, my name is Shantae Charles. I like to call myself by the name that I've been given by my creator, and that is a mental abolitionist.
I love.
I am a minister, I am an author, I am a multidisciplinary artist, and I use the arts to bring transformation to people around the world. So that is the short version of what I do.
I absolutely love that title. What does a mental abolitionist mean, though?
So, according to God, a mental abolitionist is one who comes to set people free in their mind, in their thinking, and in their thought process. So, I'm here to help people to see their way out, to help people have that aha moment, have that light of illumination come on that brings about freedom and transformation for them.
And that's the original reason why I wanted you to come on the show. But then you dropped your story on me. And before we get into, take a couple of moments and share with the audience your history of abuse.
So, my history of abuse, I would say, starts at a very young age, and it starts with grooming. Um, I remember from around the age of 5 having interactions that were inappropriate for my age
Mm.
with family members or connected family members, I would say extended family members of the opposite sex.
Mhm.
And that was around 5 years old. It was more of a touching and kissing, but it was nothing, that went further than that. Around the age of 9, I was molested by another younger, well, not younger, but another young family member. And then I remember at the age of 11, we had some family transitions in our home, and my mom was involved with a man who was involved in the occult. He was an open occultist. He was a Satanist, and he was a warlock. One of my family members got a hold of some of his intimate material in print. I'll say it that way.
Corn.
Yeah,
Okay.
the intimate material in print. And I asked that family member, you know, where did you get that from? And he told me he got it from, my stepfather. So that was how I was introduced to porn.
Mm.
So I got introduced to like seeing it, seeing the magazines and all of that around, I would say, 11 years old.
So, and sorry to interrupt you, but so 5 years old, I was taking notes over here. 5 years old, you were touched by a family member. At 9 years old, you were literally, I guess, fully molested, is what you were saying?
Hmm.
And then at 11 years old, you were introduced to corn.
Hmm.
Wow. So for the first 4 years of for the first 5 to 11, what is that? 6 years of your life, there was some kind of premature sexual imprint on your soul.
Yes.
My word. All right, keep on. I'm just, taking notes. Keep on going.
But during that time, and I say grooming because my stepfather, he would have us doing certain things for him, like rubbing his feet, um, rubbing his back. He would be half dressed and he would, ask us to come in and rub his back. So you had this sort of like touching someone intimately,
Right.
and having children touch you intimately and making it sort of a normalized part of what you did. Because anytime he wanted his feet rubbed and anytime he wanted his back rubbed, it was, oh, tell so and so to come here and perform, this activity. So, looking back, I was able to kind of see that as a form of grooming. Around that same year, I was taken along with another family member. We were often with him because my mom was working a lot. She was working all the time. And so he was with us most of the time when he was not driving trucks because he was a truck driver. And so during the day, he would have us, during the day doing errands or whatever with him. And I remember one time I was in the back seat and my other family member was in the passenger seat, and he drove us out to like this wooded area, and he stopped and he got out and he opened the door and he took the other family member and he said, we're going into the woods and we're going to be back. Now I remember it was, I don't know, maybe 30 minutes or something. Like it was a long time for me as a kid, right, to just be waiting in this car, like where did they go? So he comes back with the relative, and, she's sitting in the car and she's very quiet, very non responsive. And then he looks at me and he says, do you want to come into the woods? And I don't know what it was, but something in me just said no. And it was a very like bold, no, I don't want to do this.
Right.
And he didn't take me into the woods. But after that event, I noticed that, the other relative was starting to be like get favored more. They would get taken out places along with him. They would be given certain gifts and things that everyone else was not given. So I started to see like this preferential treatment happening. So there was one point I remember I was like playing outside, and oftentimes he would keep the other relative inside the house. So this one time we were outside playing, I went inside, and I kind of went inside, I think maybe to get some water. And I heard like this cry, I heard like this whimpering sound, and then I heard his voice. And I remember going down the hallway, and the sound just kind of kept getting louder, and I opened the door, and I saw him, in the performance of CSA. And I remember just standing there in
Hold
shock.
on for a second. Hold on. CSA.
Child sexual abuse.
Oh, oh, Lord. Okay, gotcha. All right, go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead. Got it.
And so I just kind of stood there like I didn't know what to do, but I knew what was happening was wrong.
Mhm.
And as I shared with you, before, a couple of years prior to that, I had seen The Color Purple.
Ah,
And so seeing that and remembering the imagery from The Color Purple actually connected for me to know that what was happening was not right.
wow.
And so when he turned around, he saw me, he hopped up, and he immediately began begging me not to tell anyone.
Right.
And I don't know, it was just this boldness on the inside of me that said, I'm going to tell. And I remember him like pleading, no, 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 please don't tell. Please don't tell anyone. Please don't tell your mother. I'll do anything. Just don't tell. Don't tell. And I just kept saying over and over again, I'm going to tell.
Right.
And so right after that, he ran into his room. He packed up what he could pack up, and he got out of town. He literally left town,
Mm.
escaped that very moment, which led to a court case, which led to some other things. He did not get prosecuted um, because my did not testify, even though his own daughter testified that he had done the same thing to her when she was younger. But lots of criminal intimidation went on, during the process. He would like follow us around. He would come back to our town and like stalk us and threaten us that if we testified, he was going to unalive our whole family. So
Jesus.
there was a lot there that
Jesus.
happened.
That's a lot. That's a heavy story. What we're gonna do, we're gonna come back because so many times we hear the story, but you even have some examples about how you understood that this not only happened to you, but this there was generations before you that experienced the same thing. We're gonna play a commercial real quick, and then when we come back, let's take about 3 minutes, talk about that, and then we'll go into the next segment. We'll be right back. I would love for you to join our email community. In the description box of this video is a link. You click it, put your name and email address in the information, press submit, and you are going to be a part of our email community. But guess what? You got to check your spam box because there's a double opt-in. So you got to confirm that you truly meant to sign up. Would you like to be notified every time we go live? There's a simple way to do that. Join our free text club. All you got to do is text V Terrell Hill to this number, 833-458-3658. You just text it. Text V Terrell Hill to 833-458-3658. All right, this is the last announcement, and then we're going back to the content. I am gifted to help people become their best self, and I want to offer you a free consultation. There has never been one person that has had a free consultation with me that did not leave better than when they came, all right? All of that information I just went over is in the description box connected to this video. All right, let's get back to the content. Welcome back to episode 6. If you're just watching this, my Lord, make sure you go back and watch the replay of the first 10 or so minutes where my special guest, Shantae Charles, has talked about from the age of 5 to the age of 11 plus, how her soul had been imprinted with some kind of sexual assault or introduced prematurely to sexual images. And it's quite horrific. And there's more. And I'm not even going to belabor the time. Shantae, continue on and tell us more about your story, what happened after that, and whatever else.
And so after that, we were, because of what happened and because he was pretty much like the majority breadwinner, remember, he had brought us, isolated us really from our family
Hmm.
into, black middle class. So he leaves, he escapes, all of this happens, which leads to us becoming unhoused.
Wow.
So all of our stuff thrown out, we're left with one garbage bag. We're unhoused during all of this.
And let me ask you this real quick. Did
Yes.
you feel guilty for telling
Yes.
that all that happened with your family?
Yes. I went through years of thinking it was my fault. And if I would have just kept quiet, then our life wouldn't have changed. So by the time I get to college, I am on this date, told the gentleman, he offered some alcohol. I said, no, I'm not interested. I don't drink alcohol. He offered some orange juice, drugged the orange juice, and I woke up with him on top of me.
Hold on. So the guy drugged your juice,
Yes.
and this is 18?
Yes. And it was a roofie.
Jesus Christ. Okay, and you woke up from that with him was and if you don't mind me asking, he was just on top of you or were you being literally penetrated?
He was going to town.
Jesus,
And so I woke up. He hopped off of me. He was wearing protection.
thank God.
So that gave me an idea that he had done this before. When he finally took me back on campus, I did what most traumatized women do. I took a shower.
So let me highlight this because let me highlight this. Women, and as insensitive as this may sound, with me saying this, women and men, people, humans, if you are ever SA'd, do not shower, go to the hospital.
Mhm.
Do not. I wish I could scream this and make sure it gets in the very inner sanctum of your spirit.
Mhm.
The first thing you might want to do is go take a shower because you feel nasty or you're
Yes.
embarrassed. But
Yes. And you're in
do
shock.
yes, but so let me tell you this. God forbid this ever something ever happens to you. Go to don't even go to the police. Go to the hospital because they have everything there that is
To check
needed
you.
to get you. First of all, if you're a male, you can automatically get on PEP, which is a 30-day pill to just in case that person is infected with HIV. Um,
Mhm.
and they probably have other medicines. Of course, I'm from the LGBTQ community, so I know that part. But there's probably medicines you can take, as well as they can collect any kind of foreign specimen that can be used as proof so that person can be charged. So, and not to interrupt your story, but I think that is a key point as well. Really quickly, tell me what you discovered later on about the around the fact that this wasn't a one-off situation, that you realized generations before you had suffered some kind of abuse.
So after what happened to me, I will say it was not real well received with a lot of my family members. I had family members say because I was already sexually active, I had family members say you deserve this. I had family members say, you put yourself in the position to be assaulted.
Mm,
Um, and so through my own prayer time, through my own time of therapy, through my own time of healing, in that time, God said, go back and ask your generations. Go back and talk to them.
mm, mm.
Go ask some questions.
Hey.
Because he said it didn't just start with you. Go ask some questions. So the first person I went back to was my grandmother. And that was when my grandmother shared with me for the first time. And I was probably 20, 21 at that point. That was when she shared with me that she had been raped
Mm,
2 different times in her life.
mm, mm.
One, she had been raped by a police officer. You're talking Jim Crow times,
Yeah.
stopped on the side of the road by a police officer by herself in a vehicle. He took advantage of her. A child came from that, and she gave that child up for adoption.
Wow.
The second time it occurred, remember, my grandmother is a missionary. At this point, she's a young missionary,
Mhm.
and she had gotten, a preacher. The preacher had offered her a ride home from the service.
Mm.
Got in the car, preacher sexually assaulted her,
Jesus.
got her pregnant, child sent out for adoption due to some medical issues and things. Both of the children born had medical issues that she could not afford to take care of.
Jesus.
And so the condition of taking care of the children was to adopt them.
Wow.
Um, Long story, my uncles and her reunited. We know my uncles, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. Mhm.
But products of sexual assault.
Correct. Correct. Uh-huh.
Then talked to my mom. My mom got sexually assaulted by two men when she was 16.
Mm.
Had a gun held to her head, sexually assaulted. When they got done, they put the gun in her mouth and they were getting ready to shoot her until they heard somebody coming through the field where they were doing what they were doing. And they said, "Leave her there, let's go."
Mm.
And so they ran off rather than killing her.
My good God.
So that let me know that there was a generational pattern there. And this is something that I always tell people to look for. Look for the pattern.
Look for, and let's stop for that. I'm not going to stay here long because we're already over time, but look for the pattern.
Mhm.
I know a lot of people have different spiritual beliefs and some this and some that, but if you got any inkling of spirituality in you, look for or consciousness, look for the pattern. We're going to stop right here, Shantae, and what we're going to talk about next, because we, good Lord, we could get stuck in all of this. But we're going to go. We're going to take a quick commercial break, and when we're going to come back, we're going to talk about how does this pass through happen. How
Mhm.
does how do we play a part in fueling this cycle of abuse? Then we'll take another break, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about how we fix it. Because ain't no need to talking about it if we don't bring you any solutions. We'll be right back. I would love for you to join our email community. In the description box of this video is a link. You click it, put your name and email address in the information, press submit, and you are going to be a part of our email community. But guess what? You got to check your spam box because there's a double opt-in. So you got to confirm that you truly meant to sign up. Would you like to be notified every time we go live? There's a simple way to do that. Join our free text club. All you got to do is text V Terrell Hill to this number, 833-458-3658. You just text it. Text V Terrell Hill to 833-458-3658. All right, this is the last announcement, and then we're going back to the content. I am gifted to help people become their best self, and I want to offer you a free consultation. There has never been one person that has had a free consultation with me that did not leave better than when they came, all right? All of that information I just went over is in the description box connected to this video. All right, let's get back to the content. Welcome back to episode 6. If you're just coming on, the first part of this show, we dedicated it to my special guest, Shantae Charles, telling her story on how she experienced abuse from 5 to 11, and then the she suffered the results of abuse really from 12 to 17. Then she was sexually assaulted again at 18 in college, and something in her decided to ask grandma and ma about their history. And what she found was that this did not start with her. It started generations back. And that's what we're talking about today, the generational cycle of abuse that goes from one to the next. Um, One thing, Shantae, you said in the segment before was patterns. Watch the patterns. And that is important. And that leads us into segment 2. How does this happen? And I'm going to ask you a question. How is sexual abuse able to happen from generation to generation?
Well, a couple of different ways that it can move from generation to generation. I know for me and the religious sort of context in which things were happening in our household, with the stepfather that was engaged in the occult. A lot of them take blood oaths, taking oaths that require death or require curses on your family, should whatever oath they take be broken. So some of it can come through that. Some of it is what I call cultural curses or just having miseducation or undereducation or disinformation. With my mom, the only real conversation she had with me was, I don't care if you have sex, use a condom and just don't get pregnant. Don't bring a child home because I will put you out if that happens. And so not having that real proper education coming from the home, yes, you can hear things from school.
Right.
Yes, you can hear things from your peers,
Uh-huh.
which I know for me, my peers influenced me at 14, um, because I had this idea because of what my mother said, right? I wasn't really taught about sex being something that was sacred or sex being something that was even good.
And
It was just,
let me
it,
interrupt here. I think that is something to highlight. The
mhm,
conversation. You
yeah,
cannot expect children do not come out the womb knowing what we know.
hmm,
And if you have not had a conversation with your children about not just because when we were growing up, the only conversation was don't do it. You have not had any conversation or the don't do it conversation, or in your
yeah,
regard, wear a condom, then you have not had a conversation about sex. And let me go further.
hmm.
If you've shared a preaching series from the teenage ministry about sex, you have not had a conversation about sex. The only way you can have a conversation about sex is if you've had a conversation with your children about sex. And I think that is important because, and I'll let you continue, there are so many of us who've made mistakes that when our parents found out about those mistakes, they chastised us as if we knew. When we didn't, we don't even clean our room consistently and right and take out the trash right, but yet we're supposed to hold the burden of sex. Go ahead. What were you saying?
So one of the things, the major thing, like you said, is teaching your children and not leaving it up to guesswork.
Mhm.
The other part is not allowing children rights to their person and their bodies.
Mm.
We
Explain
talk
that.
about how is it able to happen. Your children goes over someone's house and they say, I don't feel comfortable around this person. And you still make them be around that person. Or I don't want to hug this person. And you still insist. Well, that's so and so. You better hug them. You can't treat them like that. You must do it. So you're taking away their autonomy. At a
Wow.
very young age, you're taking away their right to choose.
Yeah, you're teaching them to go against their instincts early on. I'm gonna share this story, and I'm gonna share this, God, I'm gonna share this, with a lot of compassion because it's a horrible story. I knew someone who, uh, they were a single parent, and they would send their child over someone's house, and that child would cry, 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 "Please, please, I don't wanna go over there, I don't wanna go over there." But the parent just in survival, I'm not gonna beat the parent up because you don't know until you know. They were in survival, doing the best they could to find out years later, the reason why that child was begging not to go over there was because the child was literally being R-worded by not just touched, not just fondled, but literally penetrated going over those people's houses. And that story to this day still hurts my heart. Uh,
And I will say with the person that, like I said, I walked in on their CSA happening.
Mhm.
Um, when we got to the part about how could this have happened, my stepfather wrote a letter
Mm.
to that relative saying that I have permission to do this to you, and signed that relative's guardian's name on the paper. It was wicked.
And if there was
So
any kind of
if
conversation,
she was submitting to it because she literally thought she was being given over by the guardian to the let that happen to her.
and if there would have been any kind of close relationship of communication, I'm gonna go back to this communication part. If there would have been communication, it would have been really simple for this family member to go to guardian and be like, "Guardian, is this real?" But there was no communication. Or to your point, because kids are being made to do things, their communication is shut off. And we're gonna get into this because from the Christian perspective, sex is bad is not enough, or you are a whore, or God is displeased. Sex is not a straight line. It's not linear. It's really a very personal thing. But what I'm realizing is, and then I got to go to this next question. What I'm realizing is parents can't teach their children that because parents are not even educated. They don't even know what their sex life is. They have
Right,
it, they do
right.
it. There are
Mhm.
some mothers who just lay down and let the husband have sex just because they don't want to be bothered. It's just fine, do it. Oh, it's nuanced to the core. All right. God and hypersexuality. This is something that I want to discuss with you that I have been mulling over and over, Shantae. Why do most religious spaces have this deviant, dark hypersexuality right up under the covers? I'll use your example. Your abuser was a part of the some kind of satanic cult. Catholicism, you got these Catholic priests um, who are known for molesting, the altar boys or girls, or however that works. From my religion that I grew up in, the Christian church, every week a pastor is being exposed for some kind of sexual impropriety. Talk to me
Mhm.
about that.
Well, because I know a little bit about the occult and child ritual abuse, obviously having witnessed some aspects of it, um, sex in those instances can sometimes be used as an empowerment for the person. Um, in terms of the spirit world, and the younger the
Hold on,
person
hold on, hold on,
is,
hold on, hold on, hold on, hold on, hold on. Sex can be used for the empowerment of the person.
of the occultic person, yes.
Well, let's just take we're gonna go religious space all the way around because
Hmm.
I don't think you know how universal that is because we're on two different spectrums. You were raised in the
Yeah.
occultic space. I was raised in the Christian space. That that I won't stop there. Go ahead. We'll talk about that later. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. And so the younger the victim is, the more power or energy they get from that young from taking that young person's innocence. It really is an energetic thing that they're trying to accomplish by doing the ritual. So it's not just the act, it's the power that's gained from defiling.
Let's just see la for a second. Let's breathe. When I tell you, and I know your space, but I'm not looking at it just from your space. I'm looking at it from the broader space. That makes so much sense to me. That makes so much sense to me why some things are the way they are. It's power. And I think that from a spiritual perspective, though the satanic occult is more conscious of it,
Mhm.
it's not lost on me that there are some people that are not in the satanic space that are doing it and don't even realize why they feel the way they do when they do it.
Yeah, it's a soul harvesting because you are extracting the innocence from that person in the act of what you're doing.
All right.
So the other reason is that because, like you said, there's a strong emphasis sometimes on sex as being wrong, as being impure, and this is where cult leaders come in because they often hype you up with this sex is wrong, sex is impure, don't do it, don't it's bad, with the caveat of it being okay and pure when it is done with the cult leader.
Ah! I had to let that out.
Because
I'm
the,
sorry. Go ahead.
because the, yeah, so the cult leader is sanctifying or making the act okay or divine.
Yeah.
And so it holds in tension
Mhm.
this hellfire brimstone teaching. The tension is I have to embed that in you
Mm.
so that when I approach you, you understand that you are the divine one. You're the chosen one,
Mm.
picked out to do this act.
I have a specific question though, and if you don't have the answer to this, fine. I hope somebody watching have the answer to this. Why spiritual spaces? Why is deviant sex so strong in the spiritual space?
I think part of it because even it might be an unconscious understanding, but sex is spiritual. It is an act of worship. People
Right.
paid homage to their gods through the act of sex. That's why they had all of those Asherah poles, literally, phallic symbols all over the landscape of Israel, because those groves were places that they would engage in sexual act to pay homage to a deity.
So let me interrupt you then. Hold on. So maybe that's the problem. Because especially when you talk about the pass through, where a lot of religious worship is simply a pass through, there is no conversation, there is no study. Few religious spaces address sexuality. And so you got this worship space where sexuality is not being talked about, which could be literally inflaming sexual urge, sexual passion, sexual deviance, sexual darkness, because again, just like in families, it's not being addressed. And in my shameless plug in my private community safe space, I was just talking about this Thursday. We you should know your. I ask people this all the time, Shantae. What turns you on? And you wouldn't believe how many people do not know how to answer that question, though they're sexually active. So I'm like, how are you having sex and you don't even know what turns you on? And I think that is a problem in the culture. I think that is a problem in our communities that we have people doing things and they don't even know why they're doing it. They don't know the spiritual implication about it. And I'm not talking about the spiritual implication. If you have sex with somebody, you're going to get their energy. All right, we got that. We're done with that. We're talking about true sexuality. All right, one more question, then we got to take a commercial break real quick. Um, if you're enjoying this, make sure you like, share, subscribe, and comment. I've been so caught up in this conversation, I'm not even doing the normal stuff. One of the reasons why I believe there is no communication and no conversation and no reporting and no calling out and exposing is because most families, they are infested with stories of sexual abuse, and some of it is ancestral. It made me think, I think most people don't speak up because if they speak up, they also have to say who they abused in the family. I believe a lack of confrontation is due to a lack of accountability. Can you expound on that?
I feel like it's a lack of accountability, but I also think shame is tied to it
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
because, like I said, most people aren't going around saying, "Hey, when I was 5, this is what I was doing." You know what I mean? Like
Right, right.
I was opening up books. I was, sexually experimenting. So I think some of it is tied to shame
Mm,
because if I have to talk about it, then I got to start digging into my stuff, like you said.
yeah.
The other part I see is there's a lack of accountability sometimes because of grooming,
Mhm.
and parents can be groomed as well as children.
Correct. 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 Correct.
When you have parents that are groomed to leave their children in the care of abusers, when abuse happens, the parent doesn't want to take responsibility for that. The parent doesn't want to see themselves as having been manipulated into relationships that have opened their children up to abuse either.
Mm, mm, mm. Yeah, especially in spiritual spaces or with Aunt so and so.
Yeah.
It didn't happen in mom and daddy home. It happened in Aunt so and so home with the cousins. Now Aunt so and so has to face the fact that she let it go down on her watch, and then mom and daddy got to face the fact that they were so disconnected they didn't even notice that when we picked child up, that child was different. So,
And I will tell you that is a part of the outcomes that my mom is dealing with personally
mm,
is mental health issues around what happened
wow, wow,
and the guilt of that. And she has not been the same since.
wow.
And so, um, if you don't have the right processes and therapy in place,
Mhm.
it can drive people to the other end of the spectrum.
Wow. On that note, because we're gonna come back, when we come back, we're gonna be talking about how to fix this, the solutions. I just don't wanna have a sensational or not sensational, but, you know, conversation that's, like, "Whoa," it brings a lot of emotion, but then there's no solution to that. I'm gonna run a quick commercial break. Now listen, don't go nowhere, all right? It's only a 60-second commercial break. I gotta let y'all know about me, and then when we come back, we're gonna be talking about how do we fix this? All right. With my very special guest, Shantae Charles. Be right back. I would love for you to join our email community. In the description box of this video is a link. You click it, put your name and email address in the information, press submit, and you are going to be a part of our email community. But guess what? You got to check your spam box because there's a double opt-in. So you got to confirm that you truly meant to sign up. Would you like to be notified every time we go live? There's a simple way to do that. Join our free text club. All you got to do is text V Terrell Hill to this number, 833-458-3658. You just text it. Text V Terrell Hill to 833-458-3658. All right, this is the last announcement, and then we're going back to the content. I am gifted to help people become their best self, and I want to offer you a free consultation. There has never been one person that has had a free consultation with me that did not leave better than when they came, all right? All of that information I just went over is in the description box connected to this video. All right, let's get back to the content. You've watched this far, thank you so much. Make sure you're not just enjoying this. Make sure that you are sharing, and subscribing, liking, sharing, and subscribing. And please comment. Just don't comment once, but put your thoughts, put your wows, ask questions. Okay. Let's get into solutions. What advice would you give the viewer who wants to break the pathology? How did you, and if you can combine that with how did you do it?
Well, the first way that I did it was I had to, number one, accept and acknowledge what happened to me.
Mm,
Um, I had to be real about the reality of what I experienced. And then I had to recognize that I am not my abuse. I am not what happened to me.
yes.
It's a part of my story. It's certainly going to shape how I view certain things, right? But my trauma is not me. My trauma is an experience that I had and I can heal.
Mm,
So those are things that I had to acknowledge within myself, do the work within myself. If you're not familiar with the work of neuroscience and the and understanding your brain and how to rewire your brain and heal your brain from trauma, we'll talk about some resources a little bit later to help you start working with that. But your trauma does not have to keep you trapped for the rest of your life.
mhm,
The second thing, I had to recognize what autonomy and agency I had. Like I said, at that moment, I don't know where I found the courage from to say, I'm going to tell. But if you're in that moment right now, if you're dealing with someone who's, doing anything to you that you feel is not okay, that's touching you inappropriately, I want you to call upon that power within to say, I'm going to tell.
Mm.
Um, Again, recognizing the patterns, I had to go back and ask my generations questions. And again, because I wanted to know, I was not taking no for an answer. I wasn't letting them beat around the bush. I wasn't saying, well, I know you don't feel uncomfortable about it now, but we'll hold it for another time. No, I had to press the matter and address the matter.
I love that.
I did give them time to, to share. I had made time for them to share, so I wasn't rushing them, but I let them know how important it was for me to know their story and to know what happened to them. And
Wow.
to that point, I want to say, please explain to your children how your past actions or how your past trauma negatively affected your life.
Come
And
on.
one thing that the Spirit said to me, He said, children should learn from your skeletons and not have to bury them.
All right. Say that again. Powerful. Say that one more.
Children should learn from your skeletons and not have to bury your skeletons.
Mm.
So you take away the power of your skeletons in your closet by letting your children learn from them, letting your children learn from what happened to you so that they can recognize the patterns, so that they don't repeat the same mistakes. We often hear the phrase, what goes on in this house stays in this house. But again, the Holy Spirit said to me, many parents haven't been honest about what has happened in the house.
Come on.
So how can I talk about what goes on in this house? Well, you're not even having a communication about what is happening in the house.
And a lot of times, that's how things get outside of the house because there's no communication channels in the house. There would have been no need for me to say it to sister so and so or friend so and so if I had the freedom to say it to sister, brother, mother, father.
Mhm.
Yeah,
And many of us were raised under the construct children are to be seen and not heard. And
correct,
so children have seen a lot,
correct,
but they haven't been released to say what they've seen.
correct, correct, correct.
The other thing I'll say is remove harsh discipline.
Mm,
Where does harsh discipline comes from? It's fear based. It's the fear of them being just like you at that age.
right,
It's the fear that they're going to fall into the same ditch as you and not recover. And
right,
so you try to overcorrect by being overly harsh.
right, right, right. And well, how you and to that point, I've heard you sitting there and how they do that as well is verbally abuse. You sitting there looking like a slut, dressing like in that man's face, or why you switching like that? Why you act like a girl? Uh,
You're using terms like she's getting fast. She's
yes,
getting too grown for her age. She's getting they used to say this in the country in North Carolina, you're getting too fast for your britches, too big for your britches,
correct, correct.
right?
Smelling your
So there's
must. Uh-huh.
yeah, smelling your must. So
Yeah.
there's this shame and preconditioning to harm that happens with parents because I'm so ashamed of what I did in my past that I don't want to see my child go through that shame. So I'm going to precondition them by harming them to
I
make sure they don't go down that path.
I've had friends who, uh, uh, grapple with their sexuality, grapple with it, and I've seen them talk to their child with this very homophobic slur language because of how they feel about their child, and they don't want their child to ABC, and then turn around and have a very homosexual in context conversation with me. And I remember being so conflicted on the inside, but yet understanding that this person hasn't even came to terms with their sexuality. So they're now coming down on the child hard, trying yeah, and that is harmful. Oh my god, that is harmful. Give us one more nugget, and then we're gonna come on out of this, man. Good googity moogity.
People often say generational curse, but really a curse is a repeated pattern that violates your moral conscience. That's what a curse is.
Mhm, mhm, mhm.
So if you really want to work on this, think about what have been the repeated patterns that have violated my soul, that have violated my consciousness, that I haven't dealt with. But when I deal with them, I'm able to sit down with my child and have a conversation and say, these are the things that I did that violated my conscience. These are the things that I did that brought about a sense of shame or a sense of moral condemnation to me. This is how I responded to it.
Yeah, I
And
love that.
take away the language of you're going to hell.
Yeah, because now you're not blaming it on the devil.
Mm-mm.
Now you're not projecting it on some kind of external source. You're talking about you, which will in turn teach that child to look within themselves. Is this violated? Because if you want to teach your child God consciousness, ask them to ask themselves every time they do something, is this violating my consciousness? Does this violate how I feel about myself or what I want to do? That questioning alone, how I believe at least, will lead them directly to their God. Well beyond this, oh, you do that, you're gonna go to hell. That's another subject. Well. Shantae Charles, thank you so much for sharing. If you're watching this show, there's a live that we were on where we talked in depth about all the things we talked about right now. All right. So if you have not seen the live, as a matter of fact, I'm going to pin it end of this episode so you can just click the link and watch the live. Thank you so much, Shantae, for being with us today. Thank you so much. Let us know how to get a hold of you.
The easiest way to reach me and all of my links would be at Linktree. So link linktr dot ee /Shantae Charles. That link will connect you to all of the other parts of me
I
and the
love
work that I do.
I would love for you to join our email community. In the description box of this video is a link. You click it, put your name and email address in the information, press submit, and you are going to be a part of our email community. But guess what? You got to check your spam box because there's a double opt-in. So you got to confirm that you truly meant to sign up. Would you like to be notified every time we go live? There's a simple way to do that. Join our free text club. All you got to do is text V Terrell Hill to this number, 833-458-3658. You just text it. Text V Terrell Hill to 833-458-3658. All right, this is the last announcement, and then we're going back to the content. I am gifted to help people become their best self, and I want to offer you a free consultation. There has never been one person that has had a free consultation with me that did not leave better than when they came, all right? All of that information I just went over is in the description box connected to this video. All right, let's get back to the content. I'm speechless, guys. I've really enjoyed this today. Let me go over some final thoughts real quick. Thought number one, the inability to confront is fueling the chaos in your life, which gets passed down from generation to generation to generation. Your inability to confront what has happened is causing chaos to be passed down from generation to generation. When you don't confront yourself, you hide the thing you don't have to hide. The reality is you were groomed. As Shantae said, you might have even been groomed as an adult. But yet, because of the lack of confrontation, you're taking on a burden that don't belong to you. Now you're hiding and festering this cancerous guilt is eating away at your soul. Even if you're guilty, you got to confront it. Number three, I want to say confronting does not mean agreement. Confronting really means putting things on the table. And why is that? Why do I say that? Because it might be a family member you need to confront about maybe something you've sensed with their child. It don't mean that you're going to walk away from that family member in agreement. It simply means you put it on the table to be addressed. Confronting is not about peace. Confronting is not about this is not there might not be any treaties made. Confronting is a moral obligation you have to try, at least try, to stop the generational bleeding, the religious bleeding, the cultural bleeding. You want to heal up something? Confront it. You want to stop the hemorrhaging in you and all those around you? Confront it. All right. Lastly, I want to say stand fully in your story. Success doesn't stop the pass through. What do you mean? Just simply because you could not afford Nikes and now you can't afford to buy your children Nikes does not stop this generational pass through, does not stop these generational cycles. It's more than education. I'm glad you got your education, but have you dealt with the low self esteem that was birthed in you because of poverty? If you haven't, you'll have a child that has a PhD, top of their class, but don't love themselves. Possible. So if you're looking at it as, well, I got more money than my mom and dad, that's not enough. You have to confront it. How? Forgive the bloodline, forgive what has happened, and forgive yourself. I believe this is the key to real peace and real love. Thank you so much for watching this episode 6 of the Abuse series, Breaking the Generational Cycles of Abuse. Make sure you do me a favor, like, share, subscribe, and comment. If you haven't, there's an entire playlist. Episode 1, we talked to the conversation with the abuser, where I give advice to an abuser. Episode 2, we talked about the conversation to the victim, where I give advice to victims. Episode 3, we talked about grooming in spiritual spaces. Episode 4, we talked about honesty, not just for the alleged abuser, but for the accuser. Both be honest. And then episode 5, we talked about the void. So you want to check out all of the shows inside of the playlist on YouTube. All right. I'm going to play this quick commercial. Don't go anywhere. It's going to let you know all the things about me. And I'll see you the next time. Be blessed. Bye. Peace. I hope you enjoyed today's show. I really, really, really want to connect with you, all right? I would love for you to join our email community. In the description box of this video is a link. You click it, put your name and email address in the information, press submit, and you are going to be a part of our email community. But guess what? You got to check your spam box because there's a double opt-in. So you got to confirm that you truly meant to sign up. So as soon as you sign up, about 3 minutes after, check your spam box and let these people know this ain't spam. Would you like to be notified every time we go live? There's a simple way to do that. Join our free text club. All you got to do is text V Terrell Hill to this number, 833-458-3658. You just text it. Text V Terrell Hill to 833-458-3658. I am gifted to help people become their best self, and I want to offer you a free consultation. There has never been one person that has had a free consultation with me that did not leave better than when they came, all right? All of that information I just went over is in the description box connected to this video.